My name is Samia. I'm a Moroccan-American writer based here in DC. I noticed that there has been a significant lack in discussion about the political economic situation in Morocco, and I'm trying to direct it more towards the increased subsidies and public wages used to quell the popular uprisings, resulting in a significant budget deficit, which has also resulted in cuts in the education and security sector. I recently read a piece by Suhail Karam for Reuters who said that if the political situation in Morocco isn't going to push protests, it'll most likely be the economic situation, since Morocco's economy is so closely tied to that of the European Union's. So, Mr. Bin Shamsi, you spoke about the supposed wins that could get rid of the smokescreen. Would you argue that the economic situation would be a push for another major uprising?
I absolutely agree. Not only can it be a push, but I think it is more likely that the push comes from there than from anywhere else. Although we should not downplay the possibility of a revival of the global Arab Spring spirit if Bashar al-Assad falls in Syria and if other regimes follow. But I think that you're right. It may more likely come from the economic difficulties, since these has not been addressed. And not only have they not been addressed by the monarchy, but you're totally right to point that the minimum salary has been raised immediately by 15%. I mean immediately in the very few months after the beginning of the protest. The civil servants has got the highest raise in Morocco's history, up to 35%, very quickly, and all this is not sustainable in the middle term because we don't have resources for that. Morocco doesn't have oil, and not only do we not have oil or natural resources that would pay for this, but actually the main resources we rely on are very volatile ones, and they are respectively the transfer of the emigres, tourism, and foreign investment. It happens that the world is experiencing an economic crisis that is not over yet. So these three factors, these three sources of income are going lower and lower. So for now, Morocco can still have recourse to international debt to finance its deficit, but this would be more and more difficult because the foreign countries who lend this money to Morocco will have more and more severe criteria, and these criteria are very likely to be to cut public spending and to freeze the salaries of civil servants, things that are widely unpopular and that could turn out to even fuel more popular discontent. So yeah, this is a spiral, an economic one, that could very well lead to new protests. And probably in the middle term. I've been discussing this with some economists in Morocco. They say that actually the deficit can still be sustained by recourse to foreign debt for maybe 1 to 2 years, probably maybe 3 if the Gulf monarchies still help by paying. But I mean, at some point they will not do that forever. You know, they also have to pay for their own citizens, and it is way more than they pay for ally countries. So it is a major concern, and the wind could blow from there, from inside. You're right.
Yeah, I just want to add one word here. There is no doubt that the economic situation is difficult, and it's going to get more difficult. I think it's always dangerous to assume that just because the economic situation is difficult, there is going to be a political reaction. In fact, very often the contrary, the opposite is true. In other words, we can never tell, measure by what the economic conditions are, what the political reaction is going to be. Second, there is something else that I wanted to add, and it is that we have taken a very, pretty negative view of what has been happening both on the political and the economic front. I think one thing that might be worth pointing out is that Morocco is ahead of any other monarchy in the Arab world at this point. In other words, that it has gone further in terms of trying to respond to what is happening with at least a semblance of reform than any other country. And I think I'm wondering whether that is going to play out in that equation. Saying that it's further than the others does not mean that, and therefore everything is fine and dandy and you don't have to worry about it. But I think we should keep in mind essentially that this is one Arab monarchy that has at least has taken small steps. Nobody else has. So let me just stop there.
I had a question primarily for the first speaker. You mentioned that Istiqlal was likely to get the majority of the votes in rural areas, and I found that very surprising considering that rural areas are Amazigh majority, and Amazigh tend to be very, very much opposed to Istiqlal and PJD. And also, I was somewhat disappointed that no one addressed the Amazigh issue and the issue of Amazigh rights in Morocco, especially considering the Amazigh organizations have been so influential right now in campaigning against PJD and Istiqlal.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you are absolutely right. And I said Istiqlal and the POMED and the Constitutional Union and others that usually do well in rural areas and in the Saharan provinces. I didn't say that Istiqlal would sweep the vote, but it would perform better in some areas versus others. I mean, obviously not all rural areas are Berber areas. I mean, you can look at Al-Gharb, for example. There are no Berber areas in Al-Gharb. And that's not going to happen. So I'm sorry if I mischaracterized that. As for the Berber issue, I mean, I think it was constitutionalized. I don't know whether it went as far as what the demands of the Berber community wanted, but it is a significant, in my view, concession. The way how it was written in the Constitution is problematic in my view. It was put as Arabic Islamic and then, Berber, just the just opposition, which a bit bothers me in my view, because it's just you put one against the other. And you're right, I mean, the Amazigh have been campaigning against the PGD, and there has been an escalation, obviously, of a war of words between PGD and POMED and between PGD Berber areas, for the simple reason of what Ben Kira and the Secretary General of some of the unfortunate statements that he said. So that would be my answer, and I will just stop right there.
My name is Hassan Masiki, and I write sometimes for MoroccoBoard.com, which is a Moroccan blog. And my question has to do with Adl al-Ihsan and their popularity in Morocco. It seems to me that what the youth movement, the February 20th youth movement did is open the door for Adl al-Ihsan to go out on the street to demonstrate things they couldn't do in the past. And yet we have not seen their followers show up on the streets with the numbers that would lead us to believe that they have any popularity. So what's the reason behind it? If they are that popular, why we haven't seen their followers come up? Also, lately we have seen some kind of, that the February 20th movement is more fractured, there are infightings between the left-wingers and the Islamists. And my question is, isn't that somewhat a demoralizing factor that the Moroccan government will use to show the Moroccans, well, that's what you're looking at, those are your options. In one hand, you have all these extreme or left-wingers who are against the constitution, don't bring up any changes, and on the other hand, you have Adl al-Ihsan, who've been calling some followers of the Tunis movement names, some of the women that were not wearing the veil. I mean, how would you think the impact of such infighting among the February 20th movement will affect future political changes? Thank you.
I mean, you seem to make some assumptions that I'm not sure are warranted. That is, that Adl al-Ihsan has asked its followers to go out in the streets and they have not responded. And therefore, you said either, those followers are not there. I am not as far as I know, there has not been such a call. In other words, I don't think there has been such a decision made to show the full strength of the movement. That said, until the movement comes out into the open, we will never know what the strength is. I mean, this is everybody's favorite game in all countries of the Arab, of the uprisings at this point. What is the strength of the Islamists? Well, you'll know when the vote takes place. I mean, it was because, or whether there is some other manifestation. In terms of the divisions, yes, the divisions are very true. There are always divisions. I mean, this is not surprising. Will the government try, the monarchy try to exploit them? You can bet that they will. But it's, this is politics essentially. It does not strike me as being an unusual situation, what you are describing.
My name is Hamid Marnisi. I'm an anthropologist. I've listened to the panel speaking about all the reforms and the situation in Morocco, which is all good. I mean, some of it was humorous, some was serious, but we have heard only one side of the Moroccan population, the one that supports the king. What about those who are against the whole constitution, the whole regime, the whole everything? Are they represented? No. My question, is this going to play in their hands? After all these elections are over, and again, the protests will be in the streets, bloggers like, for example, Omar Balafraj and all the people who are heirs of the Ben Barka movements and so on. Has anybody paid attention to that? Thank you.
Actually, I believe your question is what about the Republicans, right? Basically. Let's go straight to it. Right? Well, actually, no, I'm not. As for me, I do believe that Morocco should remain a monarchy, but a symbolic one, like in England or Belgium, simply because the monarchy unites the people and that we should preserve this unity. But what unites the people should remain symbolic, and that the power should be devoted to those who are freely elected by the people. This is how I see things. As for those who defend, who claim a radical change and the fall of the monarchy altogether and replace it by a republic, there are some people saying that in Morocco, specifically An-Nahj al-Demokrati, which is a far-left party backing the February 20 protesters. But I totally back Marina when you say that they are of marginal significance in the political spectrum. And I believe that the people who want the fall of the monarchy altogether in Morocco are generally of political, marginal importance in the political spectrum. These are just facts, and that's about it. I just would like to make some very brief comments on what was said earlier. I'm talking about facts. I mean, when you qualified my intervention of provocative, I take this as a compliment, but again, I would like to stress that all what I have said, humorous or not, is really based on facts. And that actually those facts may be humorous in themselves, because a 98.5% approval rate is a humorous thing. Yet it is a fact. And this is how this is the official margin with which the Constitution was passed. So when we get to this point where the reality is laughable, when we should think about how serious this system is and this regime is in the prospect of implementing democracy. Just one number I forgot, Samia, when you asked about the economy. Something else, another major spending has been happening since the February 20, and it's even more than the raise I spoke about, is the equalization fund. The fund that provides the first goods, you say, les éléments de première nécessité, bread and flour,
Staple food.
Okay, staple foods. Well, its budget has been multiplied by 4, which is amazing. It tells a lot about the monarchy's fear that the uprisings turn bad. And this was done very quickly after it started. So I absolutely back you on when you say that the feeling was of wariness and when the protest started. But and this feeling of wariness was actually handled by staging this constitutional mock-up. And it was quite successful, since we are today considering that this may or may be not a democratic progress, which is the whole point of this situation. As for the play on words about ihtiram wa tawqir, well, number one, these are not my words. These are the words of the Constitution, and actually, I repeat it, this is a fact. It stems from historic roots. It's not an innocent choice of words. It is an expression that is deemed to to say to the Moroccans, remember, the king is before everything the descendant of the Prophet, and someone who the ties between the king of Morocco and the people are actually determined by the Bay'ah, the Allegiance Act, which is in the DNA of Morocco's monarchy way more important than any constitution. It's actually the allegiance ceremony happened 1 month after the sacredness-free constitution, and we could see absolutely exactly the same performance as usual. People bowing to the king, kissing his hand, himself perched on a horse, saluting the people, and then the slaves of the royal palace or ancient slaves chanting to the crowd, "Our Lord bestows his blessing on you." This happened on July 30, 1 month after the sacredness-free constitution was voted. Allow me to say that yes, this is laughable, but this is factually true, and this is what is going on in Morocco today. So we should consider all this before considering any, political movement which I deem just tactics that at the end of the day are not that relevant. When the wind will blow again, whether for economic reasons or for geopolitical reasons or international reasons or whatever, all this, and mark my words, all this talk about political parties, about elections, will immediately seem insignificant and so frivolous, because the street will speak again, and at the end of the day, it turns out to what it breaks down to what it is, which is an opposition between the street and the monarchy. For now, the monarchy is way stronger than the street. And for the street to be empowered, the only way is whether February 22 organized or more likely Al-Adl al-Ihsan to surf the wave. But that's what it is, a balance of strength and nothing else.